Hey everybody, Dave here, Hidden Freedom Investing. In today's video, we're going to go over Vanguard VYM. I selected that one over a bunch of other dividend-focused ETFs, and in this video, we're going to compare VYM against a couple other popular dividend-paying ETFs. And I'm not going to do all of them, but I'm going to do the ones that I seriously took a look at and the reasons why I selected VYM. So let's go ahead and get started. The information expressed in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. This information is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research. So in the last video that I did was a dividend portfolio update for the month of August. I revealed that I went with VYM and added that ETF inside my portfolio. So if we go here and look at the portfolio, you will see VYM here now is the #1 position in the portfolio. With a total of 382 shares, 372 of those being in one account and 10 being in another account. The tax deferred account there should have 10. So, and I keep building that out, and I went over the reasons why I even added that to the portfolio. If you want to take a look at that video that I did last month, go ahead and take a look at that here. And you know, the reason why I did that, was basically because I wanted to sell some covered calls and a lot of these smaller positions in here, like Cisco, for example. When I mean smaller, I'm just talking about the share position itself, $61. Pfizer there being a $35 stock. Let's see, we got some other ones here like Leggett & Platt, $44 stock. Cisco being a $39 stock. So that's what I'm calling by smaller, not necessarily the portfolio value. And getting covered calls out of those has been tough. So if we look at my covered call information here, you can see Leggett & Platt here. I had to do 57 days and I got 35 cents out of it. Coca-Cola is another small one. I had 14 days. I got 9 cents out of that, so it's $9. Here's Cisco right here, 25 days and 26 cents, so $26. So those smaller stocks, and like I said, what I mean by smaller is just smaller in the share price there. I could probably replace those with VYM and slowly drain some of those out of here and get into VYM. So I did a test here. I called a beta test. VYM has monthlies on it, so I did sell one monthly there. I got 15 bucks out of it, and that was for basically a $24-day hold. And obviously I have 8 days left on it. So that's the history of why I put VYM in here. But let's also talk about the reasons why I even picked VYM over all the other choices we even have out there. All right, we got VYM up here, and these are some of the criteria, the information that I wanted to put out in a little chart. So we have the Vanguard VYM. That is the one I selected. Let's talk about the reasons why I ended up going with this one. And we got the inception date there is November 2006. Expense ratio is pretty low at 0.06. We got assets under management 27 billion. PE is roughly about 23. Number of holdings, 429 holdings. Shares traded volume, 1.5 million. Dividend yield is 3.7%. 5-year CAGR is at 8.29%. Stock price is at roughly about $83. In the year-to-date performance is about minus 11.51%. And so let's go ahead and pull up the next candidate that I had reviewed. I spent a good week or so, maybe a week and a half, reviewing these and compared it against two other ones, actually 3 or 4 other ones, but I'm only going to do 2 of them in this particular video. So the second one that I looked at was SCHD. That's from Charles Schwab. Inception date is, let me see, October of 2011. Expense ratio is 0.06. Assets under management, 12 billion. PE is roughly about 19.5. Number of holdings, 101. Shares traded volume, 1.4 million. Dividend yield is 3.6%. And we got the 5-year CAGR is 10.49. We'll talk about that star here in a second. and stock price is about 56, and year-to-date performance about minus 2.2% on the year. So let's go ahead and look at the third candidate that I looked at as well. Third candidate is DGRO from iShares by BlackRock. Inception date is let me see, 06/2014. Expense ratio is 0.08. Assets under management 12 billion. PE is 22.45. Number of holdings 421. Shares traded volume 1.6 million. Dividend yield is 2.6%. 5-year CAGR, we got a star there, and we got a star over here. So that really, what that means is there's just not enough information there for a 5-year CAGR. It's actually a 4-year CAGR is at 9.79. Stock price 40.5, and then year-to-date performance is minus 3.7. And that's the time of when I took these screenshots and put the information together, which I believe was on a Wednesday, and I think September 9th. Let's go ahead and look at the top holdings on all three of these. So we got the VYM breakdown here. Financials 18%, healthcare at 15%, consumer non-cyclicals at 15%, technology at 11%, utilities 9%, industrials at 8%, energy at 6%, consumer cyclicals at 6%, telecommunications at 4.7%, and basic materials at 4%. Now here's the top 10 holdings for VYM. We got Johnson & Johnson there, number 1 position, and we got Procter & Gamble right there, number 2, JP Morgan, we got Verizon, Pfizer, AT&T, Merck, Intel, Cisco, and Comcast. Now those are pretty solid top 10 holdings in my opinion. Now granted, Comcast can, take a hike in my opinion. That thing could be boot the heck out of here. Now I don't know if there's any people that support Comcast in here, but there's just a dying company. Luckily they got the internet side of them, maybe a little bit of the streaming stuff they're doing, but cable is a thing of the past, and it's being replaced by streaming. So hopefully maybe their internet side and maybe their streaming selection can keep them afloat, but I wouldn't put that as a top 10 holding. So that's just my opinion. So it's a pretty decent top 10 holding list here. Now you notice that Intel is in there, and you notice that Cisco is in there, but you notice that Microsoft and Apple are not there. So that's pretty interesting, right? We'll talk about that here in a second. So here's SCHD, and obviously it's quite a bit of a different breakdown. Financials at 23%, industrials at 17%, consumer non-cyclicals at 17%, technology at 13%, consumer cyclicals at 9%, energy at 5%, healthcare at 4%, telecommunication services at 3%, and basic materials at 3%. And here's the top 10 holdings. We got you piece of shit up there. Number 1 freaking position, Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, Coca-Cola, Verizon, Ultra, Pepsi-Cola, Pfizer, BlackRock, and 3M. Now, a lot of these companies I don't have a problem with. I actually hold them in my dividend portfolio, obviously. But, having Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, and you piece of crap sitting up there, why are those way at the top? And that's just a problem for me. We're going to talk about a little bit more reasons why I ended up with going VYM, but some of these, obviously are, came into the, 42% of all these 10 holdings came up to 42%. So, obviously SCHD only has 101 holdings in it, so that's, a factor for me as well. But we're going to talk about all the criteria as well. So here's DGRO, financials at 18%, technology at 18%, we got healthcare at 16%, industrials at 11%, consumer non-cyclicals at 11%, consumer cyclicals at 9%, and let's see, utilities at 5%, energies at 3%, and then telecommunication services at 2%, and basic materials at 2%. And here's the top 10 holdings. So you notice in here we got Apple, we got Microsoft, we got Verizon, we got Johnson & Johnson, we got JP Morgan Chase, Procter & Gamble, Pfizer, Chevron, Home Depot's, and we got Coca-Cola. And it's, top 10 holdings there is at 27%. And now this does have over 400 holdings in it, and obviously it's got Microsoft and Apple in there, which VYM does not have in there. So that's a big distinct difference between VYM and VGRO. If you're enjoying this video of this hybrid dividend portfolio, go ahead and like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. So going back to this screen here, we know what the holdings are now, and we know how many holdings are in there. That pretty much wiped out Charles Schwab SCHD for me. I did not like the holdings in that. I did not like to have 101 holdings in there. Now granted, that does not mean it's not a good ETF payer there. All these pay quarterly, okay? None of these are monthly payers. And I do like SCHD, definitely more than PHD, all right? And we'll talk about SPHD here in a second. I know there's a lot of people that love that one. It's just not one that would have been a candidate for what I'm trying to do here. Okay, remember, I'm trying to sell covered calls against this ETF, all right? So my criteria needed to have quite a bit of assets in it, all right? So we got 27 billion here compared to 12 and 12 in these other two, all right? We also needed to have shares traded volume to be a decent amount. All right, now granted, the most here is 1.6, but at the same time, that is also a lower price stock, so that's probably the reason why it had shares traded volume is at 1.6, all right? So we got $82 stock price here, almost an $83 stock price here. We still have 1.5 million shares traded. So that met the criteria that I was looking for. It means that there's gonna be more liquidity in the options, and that's a big factor for me. If I'm gonna be selling, 40 to 50 to 100 of these contracts, I need to have the liquidity in those contracts. We also had dividend yield here. I wanted a pretty high dividend yield. I wanted about a 3.5% minimum if I could get it. And obviously that met the requirement here. We have a pretty good CAGR here. I wanted at least 8%. So we had 8.29% out of VYM. And it's also a low expense ratio. It's been out for quite a while, so we can test it against, the great financial crisis decline. We can also test it against the 2020 decline versus some of these other ones. We can only test it against one of the actual recessions that we had. Obviously, DGRO here, had a good number of holdings in there, 421. The expense ratio is a little bit higher. Assets under management is a little lower than what I wanted. It did not meet the dividend yield requirement, and part of the reason why it didn't is because it has some of those larger stocks in there like Microsoft and Apple, and it probably has Starbucks and Home Depot and all those. Some of those ones that have a lower yield. But, had a four-year CAGR in there because it didn't have enough data since it only came out in 2014. 1.6 million shares traded at a $40 stock price is probably, it should be double that, right? So it's just not, I think the liquidity is going to be an issue for that particular one. Now I didn't, look at the liquidity in either one of these, but I just knew that VYM would be, beat those out in liquidity, wise. So obviously Vanguard is top notch as well. Another thing to note here is yield to date. Year to date performance is kind of, a little, what's going on with VYM here, being minus, 11%, and then we got the SCHD, minus 2%, and you got the iShares minus 3%. So I'm not really sure why Vanguard's down. So VYM is missing some of those bigger stocks in there, like Microsoft and Apple, and in those would probably end up keeping this not down 11%. So that's part of the reasons why it's down 11%. Another one to note is, like I said, SPHD. I didn't even look at that one. I know it's only got 50-something holdings in it. And in my opinion, it's a lot of, crap stocks in there. Just not ones I even want to deal with. It's not even going to meet the requirement. Now it does, fill a role in some of your portfolio. It does pay monthly. Now you do pay an expense ratio for that. But I did not even look at that one. Now if you want more information on DGRO, or SCHD or any of those SPHDs, my buddy over here at GW ETF, Jerry, has done a lot of videos on these, and more in depth than what I've done here. I'm kind of just talking about the reasons why I even selected VYM. I'm not doing an in-depth review on any of these, but go ahead and take a look at some of these videos that Jerry did. So here's another channel you can check out, Alex over at Blood Phantom 81. He's did a lot of different videos on SPHD. He's a big fan of that one. And I always bust his balls over SPHD just because I'm not a big fan of it. But you know, he does have a valid reason why he uses it. And go ahead and take a look at some of these videos. So the conclusion is the reason why I went with Vanguard's at VYM is because we got $27 billion under management there. We have 429 positions. We have 1.5 million shares traded, and we also have a 3.7% dividend yield, 8.29% CAGR, and we got a stock price of 82, which should bring down the commissions on my covered calls. So that's why I needed a little bit higher price stock. I needed some liquidity. We got low expenses, been out for quite a while. Vanguard is top notch as well. And just to also preface this with, I also reviewed VOO and VTI. I did a video on VTI and VOO. You can take a look at that up at the top here. I did look at those as well. They just don't have a high enough yield for what I want. Now, granted, I could always flush some cash out down the road and put some money into VTI or VOO as my income goes up. I don't need as much income anymore. I can start flushing some cash out of this, you know, income dividend portfolio because I have a feeling this dividend income portfolio is going to produce more than I can use or want to use, and I'll start flushing some cash out into VTI or VOO and maybe even to QQQ. But yes, I did look at those. Liquidity's there. Expense ratio was there, you know, assets under management was there, the number of holdings was there, you know, the CAGR was there, the stock price was there, you know, the year-to-date performance was there. The only thing that was not there was the yield. So that's the reason why I didn't end up going with that. So that's the reason why I went with VYM. I'm not too worried about having these 5 stocks here not in VYM. Out of all the stocks I have in my portfolio here, those are the stocks that I have in my portfolio that are not in VYM, but I own those all individually. So I don't care that Microsoft and Apple are missing. I don't care that Starbucks and Home Depot is missing. I don't care that Realty Income is missing. I have them all right here. All right. So that's part of the reasons why I didn't go with DGRO. Amongst of all those other reasons why as well. So that's the reasons why I went with VYM over those other 2 selections. Obviously I went, you know, I reviewed a lot more than just those 2 as well. You know, like I said, I looked at VTI and VOO, but ultimately decided to VYM. It was the best choice for here for what I was trying to do. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead and leave a comment below. Go ahead and like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.